Grow, Go podcast. I'm Matt Jordan. I'm the senior pastor here at First Methodist Church Enterprise, and I'm here with the good Dr. Amy Young.
What's up?
Doc, what week is it?
What week is it?
Yeah, what week is it?
Right now, it's VBS week that we're recording this.
VBS.
Yeah. In the thick of it. So
There you go.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. It's crazy.
VBS is crazy, and we had Melissa on here a couple weeks ago to tell us about the road trip VBS.
Oh, yeah.
And we I don't know about you, but it does feel like we're on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Oh, man. The
rolling.
fellowship hall looks amazing.
Mhm.
If you guys have not seen the fellowship hall, you should see it before it's over. It actually is over now that we're recording this.
It is. So if you don't know, we record these a week ahead.
Yeah.
And produce them live on that Monday morning at 6 a.m. So if you're watching with us and it's Monday mid-morning, this goes live every Monday at 6 a.m. And so we hope that you will subscribe and make sure that you follow and make sure that you share. It has been a great week of VBS, and Amy and the students just took a trip the week before VBS.
Yeah.
Tell us about Fuge.
We went to Fuge the week before we started decorating for VBS, and it was amazing. We did a lot of hard work, a lot of yard work. We raked leaves. It was like 2 or 3 feet worth of leaves.
Where was that you were doing that?
We were in Mobile, and we were at a Catholic nursing home. I don't remember the name of it right now. I can research that and maybe put a link under the this podcast. But it was a Catholic nursing home, so we got to see lots of nuns, and they helped us tour the building. And the residents there were really grateful to have this space refreshened and taken care of, because it hadn't been. They just don't have the resources and funding to take care of this huge indoor garden. Well, it's not indoor. It's like in the middle of their building. You go through the building, and it's outdoor garden. There's a huge tree in there that produces a lot of leaves. Yeah. And man, we pulled weeds, we raked leaves. And when I say raked leaves, I mean like these leaves were
Was it over
super
on Spring Hill Avenue or Old Shell?
Something like that. Yeah, it was next to a huge church too. I remember going down past it. But it was downtown Mobile.
Okay.
And took a lot to get there. Just, the streets were kind of narrow.
I lived there. I know.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really good for our group, though, to be there. The theme was Into the Light, talking about ownership of your faith, that it's not just about what you've been told, but what you've also experienced, that Jesus has changed your life, and now you are able to go and tell that to other people, basing it off of the woman at the well, where she goes and tells the town, and then the town's like, well, we want to meet this Jesus, and she brings them to Jesus, and then they later say, we don't only believe because of what you have said, we believe because we have experienced Jesus for ourselves. And that was the whole week. It was geared towards that, really making the students think about their own salvation, making the students think about, how have I been transformed by Jesus? Am I walking in the light? And then how do I take that light to other people? It was
awesome.
really good, really great for our group.
That's great. Well, and I tell you what, I'm so glad you went. Both my alma mater, University of Mobile.
Go Rams!
Go Rams,
right?
Baby! Go Rams! But the others is every time that I always took a group of students and adults, for that matter, on a trip, there was so much connection that takes part, so much joy. I mean, just all the things about being able to spend a couple days or a week together serving, and those things just add so much cohesiveness, both of the body of Christ and in the mind. I mean, just love it. But one of the things that I love about serving with students is the amount of questions that they ask, both like great questions and things that surprise you. We had gone the St. Simons, Georgia, to do a service project. No, it wasn't. It was St. Simons. We went to Storybook Farms in Opelika, Auburn area, and Mary Evelyn interned there in college, and so she had a connection. So they always need volunteers. Well, we went in there, took like a bus or two of students and their parents and everybody, and just a great time. And the funniest thing was seeing kids try to crank a weed eater. like the things that they got to do and see and learn were that there are people who pour into your communities and show the gospel of Christ to people that are different than you and that are similar to you, and things that are just really, really neat, and show them how they can do some of that even outside of the church. Because I think sometimes students, when they think about ministry, they think about preaching, teaching, youth ministry, kids ministry, and that's definitely part of it. There's a shortage, so if there's any parents on here and you're like, my child might be leaning towards this, you need to push them there. All right, we need some more ministers.
There's one that, man, I think he could do it.
Yeah,
I think he could potentially be called into ministry.
I am praying for that.
Oh yeah,
because we need it. But at the same time, I do think it's eye opening for children and students and even parents to see that ministry is giving a space for children with intellectual disabilities and other special needs to come and have ownership of a horse and have community and learn some of those things. And it's something that you don't get to see, and unless you go and serve in those places. So that's one of the things that I love. But the other thing that I love every time we take a trip is to see what the kids don't know that I just assumed every person knew. Like how to prime a weed eater and change the weed eater line.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to do it. Like they were like, why are they hanging up like that? Like, well, that's so that it's like, never mind. Let's just crank it up.
We actually had Fuge had just purchased a bunch of brand new mowers and weed eaters and things.
Yeah. And
they took them straight out of the box and put gas in them and tried to mow. And when they did that, there was no oil in there. And so it like shocked them and like locked them up, would not even function. So we took 2, I think, with us that time and completely messed them up because the Fuge staff did not realize and know, hey, these things are supposed to have some oil in them.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the amount of kids who were trying to put unleaded fuel that was not mixed.
Yeah.
In the weed eater, I'm like, no, you can't do that. This has got to be some pre-mixed fuel. But anyway, it was so always so funny to see that. But one of the things that that I think is so important for us is with our podcast, we talk both to students. I know that there are a few students that do watch, but also to parents, family, and multiple members of our church from all across the congregation. And at this time of year in the summertime, there's a lot of people traveling. There's travel ball. There's ball games. A lot of times that's dead time in the car. So one of the things I'd asked you about, Amy, is what does it look like for us to talk about some things that are really, really important, that are hard conversations, but are needed conversations for parents. And one of the things I want to start with is technology. And speaking of technology, I used a little bit of technology to put together the first ever family catechism of the First Methodist Church Enterprise. I told Amy I felt like the Spirit was really encouraging me to do this, and Amy and I talked about it, and there's a really, really good resource. You can find it in our library, which is next to the young adult room. You can find it in any of our offices. We all have a copy of New City Catechism that Redeemer Church in Manhattan had produced some years ago with Tim Keller. Excellent resource, and really goes over what all the different signs mean in the book and all this kind of stuff. Anyways, I told Amy, I said, I think we should do something like this. And we were thinking, well, let's get through VBS and start working on this. Well, I just was playing around with ChatGPT and I copied and pasted all of our historical documents, the Evangelical United Brethren Confession of Faith, the Articles of Religion of the Methodist Church, the Apostles and Nicene Creed, copied and pasted it, threw it in ChatGPT, gave it some info and said, hey, make this a catechism.
Nice. And
in less than a minute, I had a template. And so what was expecting to take us a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I thought it would be at least a couple of weeks.
It took us a few types and, there's some things we're going to edit to make it a little smaller, but we're going to have a bunch of copies for you on Sunday. And so technology can be a beautiful thing, right? Technology can be a blessing, both in productivity, even in faith development, but it can be a danger. And some parents would say a necessary danger for their children in 2025. And I don't 100% disagree with that because of the way that communication has shifted, where Instagram direct messages is formidable conversation with small businesses in ways where I don't have Snapchat anymore, but where Snapchat has disappearing messages, and yet there are volleyball groups and
soccer groups, softball groups. They all use Snapchat.
That's it. That's how they communicate with their teammates. GroupMe and others. I mean, our phones. I remember in like 2000 and something, like 2006 and 7, and we were having a contest to see who could type the fastest on our flip
I know,
phones.
because you had to,
You know,
you had to mash that same button multiple times to change the letter.
listen, we were waiting up for the razor. You know,
Oh, yeah. I had a like a sidekick, like a little switch like that.
I had one
Then
of
the BlackBerry came out. with that
Samsung
funky
Glide or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
I had one of those. I had the little BlackBerry, the small one.
Yeah, me
with
too.
the-
And I could start typing with my thumb.
yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it, man. I loved it. But this was before like Steve Jobs only made computers at that point,
Yeah.
and iPods, and
Oh, I remember that iPod.
you know, I mean, and that's to think that we would listen to music and text and call on the same device was just revolutionary.
Yeah.
And look at us now, right? Some people don't even have a home computer because they just
They have
use
iPads and phones, yeah.
use their phones and iPads. But anyways, I say that to say, I remember that text messaging was like huge, and for the longest time until Verizon and them came up with unlimited messaging,
It was 10 cents.
it was 10 cents a message, or you were like, listen, do you have Verizon? Because if not, I'm gonna have to call you.
Yeah.
Because I can't send messages unless
If
you
you
have
got
Verizon.
T-Mobile, it's right out. Like,
Yeah,
nah.
that's it. Yeah, not happening. But now people, even though we have cell phones, they use all these other avenues of technology to communicate with one another. So I say all that to say, what are some positives and what are some dangers of technology with students, and some ways that we need to have those conversations with parents and parents with students?
I think some positives would be their connectivity to one another when being a support for one another, being an encouragement to one another. There's been a few students to say that they've used technology to do a video Bible study in the evenings. A few students have said that they have created groups in the Bible app to talk to one another over a scripture verse or different things like that. They watch inspirational and biblical spiritual podcasts and listen to these things, and it can be a help to them too to connect with their parents more regularly than they would have if they didn't have a device, such as through some kind of Bible study together with them or some kind of fun journaling type deal. My best friend has something like that with her kid, and just so. Positives is the connectivity that they have, but that's also a negative. They're always with each other all the time. You don't get a break or breath from your friends when you are constantly connected. And used to, you would see people at school that maybe you didn't like so much, and then you go home and you don't have to connect with them again till the next day. Well, now it's not like that. Yeah, I mean, if a bully is bullying, they can bully you 24 hours a day if they wanted to. So, which is one of the negatives, I think. And another thing is some kids and teenagers are told not to get certain apps, but they have figured out a way to have those apps. Like if your child has been told they can't have Snapchat, I guarantee you they might already have it. If you told them they can't have TikTok, I know several who have found a way to have it. To have TikTok. And so if you have told your kid, hey, we're just not going to do this and it's not good for you, then they've probably figured out a way. So
the App Store can be a dark place.
Yeah.
And one of the things that of course teenagers taught, if we all think back to the times that we were teens, and of ways that we would consider. I remember, and I don't think phones take SIM cards anymore, but
very rarely do you have a phone that has a SIM card.
I'm sure your friends didn't do this, but mine, some of them would have a different SIM card that they would like throw if their phone got taken, like they would take a SIM card out before they gave it back to their parents.
That prepaid SIM.
That's it. And they would take that SIM card and throw it in a phone and have a backup at school or whatever.
Oh yeah, and there's been a few avenues similar to that.
Yeah. Well,
that I've heard of.
Kids find a way, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do to stop that. If a child, a person, regardless, wants to do that, they'll find a way to get what they want. But I think that the one great danger of parenting teens is naiveness.
Yeah.
That if we ask a child, hey, do you have this app? And they say no, that we feel like there's crossing some personal boundary to say, well, can I see your phone? As a parent, I don't think that's a personal boundary.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Maybe if they pay for that device, and that's their money, but not yours as a parent. But I think that again, your responsibility as a parent is training that child up in the way they should go.
Yeah,
and asking them for their phone out of respect I think is a biblical view of parenting. And in doing so, there are apps that exist to hide other apps.
Yeah.
And if you think we're lying about this, just go to your app store or your Google Play Store and search in the search bar. Just search how to hide an app, and there will be another app that comes up that you can put as a covering on that app. So it looks like your child has the Webster Dictionary or whatever. But when
Doubtful.
but when you click on it, it goes to something else. There are ways that occurs. So I definitely think that one negative is for technology with students is the accessibility to 24/7 connection without ever experiencing boredom and creativity and those things. But I think another concern is 24/7 connection to the world.
Yeah.
That can be dangerous.
And they Google everything. Like I say something on a Sunday night or Wednesday night, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to research that and get back to you. And somebody has already Googled it.
Yeah.
And is sharing it with the group, which is good and bad. Like we have instant ability. Hey, how much is a denarii? Well, I mean, we can look that up right then. And then some of it is like, well, dude.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's some of it is, if you say, well, did Jesus really rise from the dead?
Yeah.
And some articles that come up are going to be what we would consider orthodox, conservative, Methodist, whatever word you want to put there. Mm-hmm. And other resources are going to come up and say no because of X, Y, Z. And so I think even in some ways, just like education has changed, parenting and church ministry has changed as well. That some of it is helping your children understand the right resources.
Yeah, everything you read on the internet is not always true.
And listen, colleges even are going away from physical libraries to only using online libraries,
Terminals, EBSCOhost, things like that.
Yeah, so I mean that's it should encourage us as the church. And I say encourage, I really mean inspire or empower us as church and as Christian families to understand that even phrases like of utilizing online for resource is outdated because very, very few resources now exist offline.
Yeah.
The world is online. Even Fox News. I mean, I watch more Fox News because I have 2-year-olds who want to watch Blippi. And by the time they go to sleep, I'm asleep. And so a lot of my Fox News is on TikTok or whatever can come up on a live feed that I can just throw up in the corner of my computer while I'm working or whatever. And so even the way that the world addresses communication has changed. But in my era, and I think that this is where some parents who are my age or older than me is the access to strangers in the world. Yeah. And in my era, that was through Xbox, online gaming.
And the headset. Online. Man.
You're talking to some kid in China and you know that they're speaking some language you don't understand, but you know it's not nice.
Yeah.
And
because they're yelling.
You've connected with some stranger in the world. Well, now, I mean, it's a friend request. It's one search. It's a familiar friend. It's a fake profile. And all of a sudden, things are exposed. And access to the world. Where in my era, if you wanted to find my era and in the 80s and the earlier 90s and the 70s and the 60s, if you were searching for explicit material, pornography or anything that of substances, things like that, it was a difficult process.
Yeah.
It was hard. And if you were in a small town, almost impossible because you didn't have a newsstand that had, black covered magazines or whatever. And the revolution, both of the revolution of sex in our culture and the revolution of access to information has changed to where a student or a person of anybody can use any social media app and find explicit material.
Yeah.
Material that I would even argue 20 years, but definitely 30 or 40 years ago was only accessible at certain movie theaters and accessible at certain sources.
In the back of the rental place.
Movie gallery, Best Buy.
Yeah.
Or not Best Buy, what was that? Blockbuster.
Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's on anybody's social media feed. pornography as itself, as an industry, outside of human trafficking, I would venture to guess is probably the most profitable crime, business, whatever words you want to use, for people that generate a profit from that type of work.
Yeah.
And the great danger is, I heard this stat this morning in a TikTok from a credible source, that 7 out of 10 men in a church struggle with pornography addiction, and I can tell you that pornography is something that has changed over the years of what people define as that. Mm-hmm. Not changed in a positive or negative. I mean, it's all horrendous, but there's a lot of change going on especially in the state of Alabama and other states now with new legislation of filters to access that information and what can be put publicly without being censored and those sorts of things. But the access to all that stuff is insane. So just our understanding of sex. I'll never forget, we had gone to New York some years ago in June. It was during Pride Month, and I was shocked at some of the demonstrations. Not from a position of hate or anything like that,
but the explicitness of it.
Yeah, I mean, people were walking around literally naked.
Yeah, just being explicit, and like you said, like it's not hate or anything to have an opinion about what you're showing in the public eye. Like anybody could walk by and see this, and it's
I have been. I'll be fully honest. I have been to Mardi Gras on Fat Tuesday in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And what I had seen in the open public square of Manhattan during that Pride March, of people walking around in all kinds of attire that was completely naked, and things of that nature, just in the wild public, it just shocked me.
Yeah,
shocked me, and didn't shock me because of their demonstration. Shocked me because of their openness to do that in public.
Yeah,
and part of that's probably growing up in the Bible Belt, to where like you don't talk about those things ever at all, never
ever.
It's
not good either.
Right?
That's the other extreme. Like, it's not good to not talk about it.
There's another side of that, but I think, and the reason I bring all of that up is because there is a danger, and in what our children see at such an early age, that forms those attitudes and addictions and those things. And if we're not careful, then if we don't have conversations with our children, not of abstaining from things, but of having a biblical understanding of the position of sex in the Bible and relationships and honoring one another and those things, then I think it's a grave danger. And the reason for that is because when we communicate it, just like never talking about it, communicates that it's shameful.
Yeah.
Well, Scripture doesn't speak to that. Scripture speaks in a way. I mean, there's a whole book called Song of Solomon about,
and it's all about that.
About all of that. And Tim Keller, even in The Meaning of Marriage, I tell this to every couple that I give premarital counseling to. The last chapter, and Keller does this on purpose, I'm pretty sure. He saves chapter 8 for the Christian and sex and what the Bible has to say about it, the last chapter of the book. And he says that the Bible's not kind of the prudish. And so it is this is from one of the most conservative and deeply theological contributors in the modern history of the church. And so it is a valuable and important thing. But if we continue with the old way of speaking to our students appropriately, right? I'm not saying sit down with your 4-year-old and have the birds and the bees talk, but you have to express this to them, because there are students under the age of 5th grade who are being exposed to pornography.
Yeah, I think the age right now is like 7 to 9. Mm-hmm. There's a high chance even your 7 to 9-year-old has seen something or heard something because of friends, especially if they're in public school.
Yes, right. Especially if they ride the bus.
I believe in public school. My best friend's a public school teacher, but I'm just saying it's out there. Not only, but especially.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're around other kids, because you never know what their parents do and don't show them either. But before we get too far removed from the methods and the means, I will say this about another thing. Like you mentioned, an app that can hide other apps on your phone, but also teenagers are now using their friends' devices to create their own accounts. And when they see their friends during the day, they'll ask their friend to sign out of their TikTok or sign out of their Instagram or sign out of their Snapchat so that they can sign in to the account. So they're not always using their own devices to create accounts on these apps that you have told them they cannot have, the parent has told them they cannot have. Because if they have a friend whose parent allows them to have TikTok, they will use their friend's TikTok app to create a TikTok account. And during the day, while they're at school or while they're hanging out or while they're at sports, they will ask their friend to log out of their TikTok, and they will sign in to a TikTok account that they have created for themselves to try and get around this whole thing of the parent says I can't have TikTok. So just to be aware of all the methods and the means for viewing explicit things or just having something their parents say they cannot have, things like that.
And I tell you another side of that on the same vein is fake accounts.
Yes.
That they make.
Finsta or it's like a fake Instagram.
Your Finsta page.
Yeah, it's your Finsta page. Multiple Instagram accounts that you allow some people to see this one, allow some people to see that one, and it's odd to me. I can't keep up with Instagram accounts.
I would venture to guess if you're a parent watching this and you follow your child on Instagram and they only have like 4 posts on their page.
Yeah, they have another one,
and it's all extremely clean and just beautiful. It's 4 or 5 pages. Then they probably have another one.
Yeah. And if you've told them they can't have TikTok, they probably have an account.
They probably do.
It's just not on their phone.
And I would say this, if you've got a child, because we got some that I know post a lot on their social media, and most of it is biblical content, or at least what we would consider wholesome, fun teenage behavior. If they have multiple posts on that page and they are clearly active on that page, and it's not like the 1 or 2 main events of their life, like once or twice a year, then you probably just need to have a conversation that goes something like, hey, have you ever heard of a Finsta account, and just kind of see the reaction, because I bet they don't have one. But if your child only has like 5 posts on their page, you need to start following their friends and see suggested followers.
See if they have something else.
That's it.
Because it could be. And that's why we talk a lot in students about character and integrity, who you are, and being who you are everywhere in all spaces, and not hiding some parts of yourself. And that's what I think they're doing with these Finsta accounts. I want to show this impression to parents and church leaders and coaches and stuff, but I need to have this for my friends.
You hit the nail right on the head. And here's why this conversation is valuable and important, okay, is the amount of parents who, A, don't know what's going on in their children's life, and B, don't understand why their child fell away from the faith in college or as older adults, even though we drug them to church. And then I would say C, and C being that statistics show us that teenage girls around 6th grade and older is one of the highest statistics of suicides in the world. And I don't even know off the top of my head the statistics of those children who cut or burn themselves and things, but that's an alarming statistic as well. And those are things that are hidden. And I can't tell you the amount of times that a child has taken their life, or that a parent finds out that they're cutting or burning or doing something like that, and say, I don't know, I understand how they could do this. I never saw any signs. Well, part of that is with technology, they hide those signs. They don't talk about it. They think they can deal with it on their own. And if we're not engaged as parents, then we find ourselves in a pretty tough spot. And so I think it's healthy to engage. I think it's healthy to say, as a parent, I would like to see your phone, or and follow your kids' accounts and follow their friends. You're the parent. I mean, I think that's an important part. Something else that's big, and this is something that I think every generation has struggled with, and that's part of the coming of age. If there's anything that is a greater temptation or struggle to teens, children, young adults, outside of struggles with pornography and sex and those things in relationships, it's substances. Whether it be alcohol, vaping, other tobacco products, those sorts of things. And you may say, Matt, why is that important about a church? Well, one thing is, I think that obeying the laws of the land is important. Jesus even gives us that, and as does the Old Testament, that
and Paul in Romans.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is just we're supposed to be good citizens.
Yep.
But the other is, there are times in Scripture where Paul encourages Timothy to drink some wine to help his stomach and his ulcers. There's times when we know communion originally was done with wine. Jesus' first miracle was done with wine. In the ancient Near Eastern world, the water was not very safe to drink, so fermented alcohol was what was a standard drink for them. And so we know that this is a part of church life, and there are some denominations that say we don't believe in drinking alcohol at all, and I'm fine with that. And there are other denominations and independent churches and others that say everything's fine in moderation. I think the Bible supports a view of that in some ways, especially with Paul's encouragement to Timothy to drink when is needed and things.
Yeah.
So I think that's a gray area for Scripture. One side of that is to say, in holiness, I choose not to do this. There's actually a lot of young adults and especially millennials and some Gen Z who are really embracing this sober society, which I think is really cool. I think is a great thing, and but either way, it is something that every generation has had teenagers with an issue of something of this nature. I grew up in a county school, and tobacco was a big thing.
Really,
my dad is a tobacco user, and so is my mom, and it's so funny because now in the world there is all of these different flavors and things, and we actually had
these little pouches,
and Juul and vapes and all these other things that are nicotine. We actually had someone come in and speak one time to the church and to the community, but so did Enterprise City Schools a couple of years ago. And he named off like the flavors, and he said, "Let me tell you something." He said he spent time in prison. The guy said, no grown man is walking into a Chevron gas station looking for bubblegum flavored tobacco.
Yeah.
This is being marketed to children.
Yeah.
This is being marketed to kids. And that's where the danger is there's danger in addiction. We have Celebrate Recovery here. And I can tell you, I've seen addiction. And so I think both biblically as a parent and as a church leader and as a Christian, there is something to obeying the laws of the land and honoring the Lord with your body, and being mindful of what you put into your body and the substances. And those things can cause a lot of health concerns. We know that now. We didn't know that 20, 30, 40 years ago. One of the greatest baseball movies ever is The Sandlot.
Oh, yeah.
And there's an epic scene where they all steal somebody's daddy's chaw and all throw up on the roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
All
like
over.
some kind of tilt-a-whirl or something.
Yeah, and that would never be in a movie in 2025 because we know the dangers. We know it's bad for you. We know it causes cancer. We know it does all these things for us. And there are still some social circles around some of that, but for children, there are some concerns. And with vaping, I think that's probably the greatest concern.
Yeah.
Both in its accessibility and the damage that it does with what they call popcorn lung.
Yeah.
But I can tell you with students, in my experience, and what I see, vaping has probably been the greatest substance issue that I have seen outside of alcohol. And I would say even more than drugs. I mean, I've not seen, and I'm not naive. I know that is an issue in our area in some places, but I can tell you, vaping is a greater issue than alcohol and drugs. In our area,
vaping is an issue more than alcohol because it's more accessible. They know how to get one.
Yeah.
They know somebody that knows how to get one, and they pass them around. So not only are you exposing yourself to the chemicals within the vape, you're also passing this vape around. So whatever sickness your friend may have, you're gonna get it too. So they're borrowing each other's. They may hit it once a day because they're bumming off of somebody. It's I think a big issue in that some of them think it's laughable, like it's not something to take seriously, that, oh, it's just a vape. It's like, okay, well, it's a chemical substance that you're supposed to be, 19 in order to buy?
21 in Alabama now.
21 in Alabama now? So, it's just, there's a reason for that age.
Well, and it produces, when those elements are all heated, it produces formaldehyde.
Yeah. I mean, there's several things.
But the thing, this was 7 years ago, I guess, when we were 6 or 7 years ago, we were having a big conversation in the world about it. But I remember an article specifically of an adult who, one of the things that they used to advocate was it's a safer alternative to cigarettes.
Yeah.
Now.
And they said that before any research was done.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And now it doesn't say that.
Yeah.
But there's one article, an adult said, I transitioned to this because I was like a pack-a-day user or something.
Yeah.
And every time I just, I felt bad or felt horrible or whatever. And he said the more that I did the vape, I didn't feel any better. And I was using more nicotine. And he said, if I was going to kill myself, I'd rather know I was doing it. And it was just shocking to read that.
Yeah.
And that's all that to say, when you consider not only as a parent, but as a believer in Jesus, understanding both your physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, all those things go into play, and understanding how to obey the laws of the land, and I would even say understanding things to do in moderation.
Yeah.
There are benefits to a lot of things in life, but with young children and teenagers and things, some of these issues. Some of the side effects of these things that adults either don't take seriously or that adults have already had exposure to for a long time, that cause more harm with children and students. So, So I guess what the question would be, how do you have that conversation with your teenager?
That's a hard one because they're prone to lie. One of the, one of the reasons why I think it's so bad is because, for one, it creates this deceitful nature in them. Like, they know that it's wrong and they know that their parents would not like it. And so they intentionally try to hide it from their parents. They intentionally try to hide it from other teachers and coaches and things because they know. So it promotes a deceitful nature within them as well, not just the physical effects, but it's like the emotional and the familial effects of it is like you are creating distance between yourself and your parent because you're intentionally hiding something from them so that you can get your way with trying this substance. And so I just don't like it also because of that. And they're too immature to do something that's supposed to be made for mature people too. And it's a hard thing to bring up with your kid or teenager because they are naturally prone to shy away from the consequences. In order to do that, I'm going to lie about it. So I think the way to approach it is ask them about their friends. Like, hey, do you know somebody that's doing this? Because I've heard of this, and what do you know about it? And try to segue into, have you ever been tempted to try it? And if you've tried it, like, have this openness with them to broach the topic and say, hey, there's going to be no lecture. There's going to be no disappointment. I just want to know, have you tried this? Has your friend tried this? Or is there anybody that I know of your friends that has tried this? And if so, why? Like, what was your draw to it? What is their draw to it? So I think I would start out first by asking about their friends and see if they'll open up a little bit and just encourage them that this is not about you getting in trouble. This is not about punishment or disappointment, because most of us will say we've tried something in our lives. I mean, there's no condemnation.
And I think when you ask that question of, as a Christian, why does this matter? Why is it important? As a parent, why should I create more trouble than that may not be there?
Yeah.
Right. Why should I do those things? Well, one, it's sort of like if you see a baby snake lying around, mama's somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. That's not reading into. That's not creating more trouble. If you see that baby snake, you need to leave. Right. In the same vein, I think that when you think about any type of substance, whether it be tobacco, nicotine, drugs, alcohol, whatever, I think that's the way they have that conversation. To say, do any of your friends, do this, or have you been exposed to this? And I would say if your child is, I would say if your child's in middle school at the oldest, I would have that conversation.
Yeah.
We actually had here at Enterprise a series of issues where middle school students had access to vapes and were using them. And it's not harmless. It's an issue for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But I think that the greatest spiritual issue is it does cause a heart of deceitfulness.
Yeah.
To hide those things.
You're intentionally hiding something, because you know that it's not really right for you to do this.
That's right.
And
Scripture says to honor your father and your mother.
Yeah.
And I think as a parent, you can ask them to honor you, not just in right behavior, but in open and honest conversation.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, my mother is the most unashamed, bold person in the world. And there were two moments in my life that I remember specifically. I'm 31 now, and I was 13 and I was 12 and 14 when these two moments happened in my life. When I was 14, we had, I guess it's part of being a public school, but we had a lady named Miss Z. Miss Z came in and talked about the birds and the bees with us, and talked about why you need to put on deodorant, and helps class, but a little further, right? Yeah. And she had encouraged our parents to write a letter for us on behalf of like what they would want our first date to be like, or whatever those sorts of things are. Well, she loved my mother's. And so my mother gave her permission to read it in class.
Oh, Lord. I
never got a date after that. I mean, it was like, I pray that Matthew has a date that's open and in the public to reduce temptation. I mean, she understood the assignment and did it well.
Yeah.
And as a teenager and as a child, I'm like, that is just, what are you doing to my reputation?
Yeah, so it's horrifying.
Right? Like now, like I won't even have guy friends who want to be with me. But
Matt is lame, man.
Yeah, but as a parent and now as a pastor and as an older adult, I look back and I just say, my goodness, thank you for that wise advice.
Yeah.
And thank you for your wisdom. But the other was at 12 years old, when I was coming to middle school. Of course, we had the talk, and those things. And again, that was like 2000. I came into middle school in like 2005, 2006. So I don't even think the original iPhone was out then.
No, it wasn't.
Close. Twitter didn't exist. Facebook was very, very new.
Mm-hmm.
Snapchat didn't exist, and Instagram didn't exist. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And she said, I just know if you ever get invited to a party or you go try something or whatever, you can always call me to pick you up. You won't be in trouble. We'll have a conversation. Mm-hmm. You may be in trouble the next day, but listen, there is nothing that is more concerning than your mother telling you, I will come pick you up from a party, and having that conversation where you're like, if I get caught, I would rather be in trouble than to be embarrassed to that nth degree, as a teenager,
Yeah.
As a parent, I'm like, I appreciate your openness. But I say all that to say, it does communicate love instead of shame.
Yeah.
Because when you communicate shame, I don't know what it is with teenagers, but it instills within them both such a negative thought process about themselves, but it also stirs them up, and it does this with anybody, to do the opposite of what you just said.
Yeah.
For example, if you say, if I ever catch you with a vape, I'm going to kick you out of the house. Listen, that's for a lot of teenagers, that's all the fuel they need to go and do it, either out of spite, or to feel so shamed that they don't understand it. And I see this even in the church along the basis of sex, where for 30 years of our life, which 30 is getting closer to be the average for new married couples, but let's just say 18, 19 years of our life before we leave to go to college, we are told time and time again by our parents that sex is bad. You need to abstain from sex until you get married. You don't need to do anything, whatever. You're going to hell. Well, what happens when they get married? That honeymoon night, they're told by their mother or by their father or by their loved ones to say, "Hey, go have a great time. You're married now. Have fun." Well, let me tell you something. 20 years of messages that you've received about an action will trump the permission given to you on one night. Um, and it causes, there's something significantly special about sex and marriage. And the way that we handle that conversation of, instead of shame and abstinence, to appreciation and respect and holiness and the biblical view of it, will change marriages in the future as well, and prepare our children more.
And I think it
for
makes
that.
them intentional about other areas of our lives too.
Yeah.
Like what substance we're putting in, not just chemical substance, but also, are you eating healthily? Like,
Body
is
dysmorphia.
your caffeine intake, as Celsius and
What you
Alani
trying to
is
say?
a lot to you right now. What was that? I mean, I drink a lot of coffee, I will admit that, but all these energy drinks are really on the rise right now too. And there's been a lot of people to come out to say, these are not researched heavily. We should be careful in how many Alani or Celsius you're drinking. If you're drinking more than 3 or 4 a week, you should probably cut back on those kind of drinks. Don't tell me that about coffee, though. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's a
good
bean.
for
It's
you.
natural. So I think that it communicates a lot, not just for like waiting for marriage for sex, how good that is in marriage and the way we handle that, but also, what does God say about our bodies? What does he say about, being open and having honest conversations with people? Because I think they also don't know how to communicate with one another
That's right.
very well. I know several teenagers that have said, I need to say this to someone, but I can only say it through text. And I'm like, that's an issue. Like, we need to get back to having hard conversations with one another too. So our physical health, our sexual health, our emotional health, our health with one another, communicating with one another, it's all wrapped up into, for one, how do we view the Bible? How does God affect? How does the gospel affect all these areas of my life too? And I do think we've done I don't teach purity in students. I teach, why did God create sex in the first place? And we don't have a purity culture in students. We have a gospel-centered view of all areas of our life, including sex. And I think we've done a disservice. Like, when I was growing up, it was taught like that.
Yeah.
It was taught like that. You don't do it, because if you do, you become broken and impure. And they had the heart, and they would rip it into different pieces. And if you have sex with this person, it's one piece of your heart. And then they say, can you put this back together? Well, no, you can't.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a horrible message for people.
I was speaking of that. I remember this story, and it is so, 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 so powerful. From his Matt Chandler, and you may have heard this, but those listening, Matt Chandler's pastor of Village Church in Texas. And let me say this to what Amy says a minute ago, if you're not familiar with that language of gospel-centered, and how the gospel transforms us. That's why we're having this conversation. So often the church has put itself in a really emotionally unhealthy position. If you've been coming on Wednesday nights and heard that language, to where there's a separation between the secular and the sacred.
Yeah.
And there are some things the church should not speak to. Well, if we believe that we are a new creation in Christ and the gospel transforms and changes our lives, then there is nothing off limits for Christ in our life.
Yeah.
And it transforms everything. And even in the way we parent, the conversations we have with our children, our view of substances, whether they be in moderation or whether they be in total abstinence because of faith practice, or maybe your family has a history of alcoholism and addiction, and it's just best to say, I've seen this damage and I don't want to pursue that. Whatever it may be, it's not from a position of, here's two people that you trust and love, or at least we hope you trust and love us, that giving you advice on these are some things that are really happening in teenagers. It's from a gospel-centered position. Our communication to the students, to the kids, how I try to communicate in all my Bible studies and preaching and things, is the gospel impacts all of our life, and there's nothing off limits to that. But let me explain. This example that I'm about to give you, I think, is really going to explain the heart of gospel-centered conversations instead of things that are separated, secular and sacred, or what we would call the purity culture and those sorts of things. Matt Chandler tells the story. Have you heard this about the rose?
Maybe.
So Chandler's at a conference, youth conference. He's young. He's in college. And this speaker is talking about purity and takes this rose and passes it around to everybody in the room.
Yeah.
And it just is like falling apart when it gets up to the stage, and the petals are all gone. It's broken. It's been passed through hundreds and thousands of people. And I guess at the front, the speaker holds it up and says, "Now, who would want this rose?"
Oh, wow. That's horrible.
Who would want this rose? And Chandler yells out in the crowd. He says, "Jesus wants the rose."
Nice, yeah.
Jesus wants the rose. That gives chill bumps on me still to this day, because it should speak to us and demonstrate that the love of Christ transcends the things that we consider shame and wrong. And we know that, right? Every one of us would say every sinner's got a past, or every saint's got a past, and every sinner's got a future, right? We say that, but how we use that or understand it in our life, in the line of substances, or in the line of sex, or in the line of misappropriate use of technology, or in being connected 24/7, and we think we're doing a good thing to say, hey, if you have multiple, I remember that conversation well, like, hey, if you have sex with multiple people, then you're not going to have anything to give to your spouse. Well, that's pretty shameful, right?
And not true. Like, I know people who make some poor decisions and then have a great marriage now. So, it's not true. God, Jesus can redeem anything.
The woman at the well had 5 men that she lived with, and there is some scholarly debate in the original Greek that aner, the word there is that she's had 5 men, and the one she's with is also not her husband. That those other 5 men weren't her husband either, and that woman, like you mentioned it, the woman at the well, when you're talking about fugue camps, the disciples have been in the town all day.
Yeah, and they came back with what?
Food.
That's it. No people, didn't tell nobody, hey, the Messiah's with us, like nobody. And she came back with the whole town.
The whole town.
Yep.
The whole town, because she's been redeemed by Christ. And so I think teaching one another and our children the power and grace of Christ, the power of the Holy Spirit, and the beauty of so many of these things there's beauty in connection, there's beauty in community, there's beauty in a right understanding of sex with your husband and wife. There's beauty in all of God's creation, and there's beauty in every person, shape, size, whatever. But if we're not careful, our own sinfulness and depravity will destroy those things. If we don't keep it in the perspective of gospel-centeredness. So I think that's really, really valuable for all of us to understand why we're having this conversation. To be a faithful follower of Jesus Christ and living holy, it's done more than Sunday mornings, and it's done outside the walls. But our teenagers, y'all, they need your prayers, and I'll tell you why. All the things that we've talked about, that's a day at the high school.
Yeah.
It's a day at Enterprise High School. I mean, just these are things that happen constantly on every hallway, every corner, every group, whether it's show choir, cheer, volleyball, softball, football, baseball, soccer, golf, the non-athletes and non-committal people that aren't involved in anything. This happens. This was 7 years ago. I had a kid who had been coming to student ministry for quite some time, had a vape fall out of his pocket in the middle of playing basketball. It happens at church even. So the reason that you need to have those conversations, and Amy and I aren't trying to give you permission. We're not trying to say that we know all the best answers. What we're saying is, here's the statistics. Here's what we've seen. Here's the reality. And if we're going to be the best parents that we can be, we can't accept the naiveness that doesn't happen here And that doesn't happen with my child.
Oh yeah, like don't automatically assume. That's one of the things I wrote. Don't automatically assume it's not your kid.
Yeah.
And sometimes we hear things that parents may not hear, just because of the nature of us being around kids and students. You being around in the community as well. You hear from sheriffs. You hear from different people who work in the police department and things too. So we may hear things that parents don't necessarily hear, that we are able to say, hey, you may need to have a conversation.
Of course, I grew up in public school. I'd also volunteered at a private school in Mobile and a public school. And so I've seen it all, inner city, county, somewhere like Enterprise. And we have one of our Wednesday night and Sunday morning security guys, one of the sheriff's deputies who went to be an SRO at one of the county schools for a short period. He said, man, I'm amazed. He said, just this week, not only have I sent someone home for fighting, I sent someone home who had taken vodka and put it in their Coke bottle, mixed it with their Coca-Cola so you couldn't see it.
Yep. Sprite was a big one when I was in high school.
Yeah, I mean, kids get creative.
Yep.
But this is middle school. And just imagine how many times your kid shares a Coke with a friend.
Yeah.
Of a way that they've just gotten that hit. And I'll tell you this story, and I keep bringing it up, and the reason is I'm convinced there are two things that are the greatest temptation to teenagers: substances and sex.
Yeah.
Both from a hormone perspective and an eagerness to become an adult.
Yeah.
But I had a family in Mobile. We had a parent summit at our church there, and they had a speaker come in who, for the life of me, I can't remember his name. But anyways, he had a resource of how to have those talk conversations appropriately from infant to senior in high school, of ways that you can talk about respecting your body and loving yourself and how to share that with another person and those sorts of things from a biblical perspective. It's really, really great. But anyways, we had a parent who expressed to me this, and they were just crying in the lobby of the activity center. I was like, what's wrong? And she said, I've just tried so hard. And they monitored their kids' devices. They had great trust with their children. There wasn't a helicopter mom or anything like that. They monitored whose friends' houses their children could go to, and whose friends could come over and had to stay in the yard or had to go out, and all these sorts of things. They monitored every bit of that. And a 12-minute ride from their new school to their mom's school that she taught at across town, and the kid was exposed to pornography on the bus.
Yeah.
A kid on the transfer bus turned around and said, look at this.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's what we're saying is, this is the reality of the world. That's not just your child, but it's what they experience and see every day, and the accessibility that they have both to different apps and technology that you either allow or don't allow in the home, or don't allow until they're 18 or old enough or whatever it may be, to substances, to all of these things. It's not just what your child does or has access to, it's what others do that they see. And so you need to be having those conversations. It's really, really important. And the summertime, to me, is a great time to do that.
Yeah.
They're a little more relaxed. Sometimes it's easier if you're spending a week at the beach and you ask that conversation on the first day when you're sitting at the beach and your teenager says, oh, Lord, day one, really? Day one, we're going to have this conversation. And then by the end of the week, after you've bought them all the food and all the toys and all the things and all the ice cream, you sit down and you say, remember what we asked you on Monday? Have you given any more thought to that? I just love you, and I just really want to watch out for you. That maybe we're more likely to open up. And sometimes in that dead time, instead of playing I Spy in the car, you can have a conversation. Share your own story too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Share what you experienced. And say, look, not only is it a regret, but it's something that I wish I would have known, that could be valuable. Amy, you got anything else for us before we end?
Yeah, I mean, I would just further that and say, be intentional, ask intentional questions, listen rather than lecturing. There's a lot of teenagers that have told me before in my several years of ministry is I don't tell my parents things because when I do, they will give me a lesson or a lecture. And so just listening rather than being quick to fix or being quick to lecture or being quick to turn it into a teaching moment. Just listening and asking more questions. They'll say something, you can just say, well, tell me more about that. A quick Google search will give you a page that says 100 questions to ask your teens. And these are not necessarily spiritual in nature, but you can make them spiritual in nature. One of the questions says, what are the best and worst things about having a smartphone? And so you could jump off of that and say, well, how can I use my smartphone in a biblical way? So you can turn these things into a spiritual question. Another one that I saw today is, can you teach me how to text faster? Can you teach me how to create something on Canva for your phone? Can you teach me how to, because students are super amazing at using these technologies and devices, and sometimes we're not. So they teach me things all the time that I didn't know how to do. So just asking them to teach you something will also help then their confidence in their relationship with you and building that trust and being open. Asking them what shows are they watching right now, and don't be hard on them for watching something that's not necessarily great. Just saying, oh man, I would not watch that, and your teenager may say, well, why? It's like, well, because it has this, and this, and I don't really prefer that. So just asking intentional questions, listening rather than lecturing and turning it into a lesson. I will say that that's one of the biggest things with teenagers is I don't tell my parents things, because when I do, it turns into a lesson. So just being there for them rather than trying to fix their behavior and things like that will go a long way.
That's good. That's good. Well, Doc, I'm going to end with this. What was the I asked Amy to look through some statistics for our conversation today. We knew sort of the topics we wanted to discuss and just have a conversation about those. But Amy, what were some of the most shocking statistics that you found about teenagers and these things?
Well, I wouldn't say I was shocked. I was shocked it was not more, but I would say that some of the things that I found was an article that was written 2 years ago. It says 20% of Alabama teens have admitted to vaping. So just 2 years ago. So about how many high schoolers do we have at the school? About 2,400-ish. So that's 480. So 20% of 2,400 students, is 480 of them have admitted to vaping. And that's not just including the ones that have hit it once in their life. Like, this is people who vape. And then another one said 13% of teens in Alabama reported drinking alcohol, and most of those are reported to be binge drinkers. So when a teenager is doing something that is supposed to be for mature people and they're immature people, they take it too far. Like, they don't know when enough is enough. So most of those teenagers will not just have a sip of something, they will binge drink if they go anywhere for it. And then a lot of those teenagers are, if their parents have let them have a sip of something in the home, they're more likely to have something with a friend. And so also the things that I found is areas of concern. If they joke about drinking, if they joke about smoking, they're more likely to do it. If they have older siblings or cousins who plan to attend parties in college, or they drink in college, they're more likely to do it and be a part of that. If they're hesitant to have a real conversation about substances with their parents or other adults in their lives that pour into their lives, like ministry leaders, then they're probably doing it. And then another one was, we've already said, don't automatically think it's not your kids. So teens are not mature enough to make these decisions about substances that affects their decision making and their impulse control, and they're more likely to have a drinking problem later in life. So some people think alcohol is not a big deal if they're 15, 16, 17 years old, and they're in the safety of my home. It's not that big a deal. In high school, we had a parent who would allow drinking in her home as long as you turn in your keys. And these are minors, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, go into this person's house because their parents allowed drinking as much as you want, for as long as you want, as long as your keys are in the bowl and you did not drive drunk. They would just do that. And a lot of people that I know are drinking heavily as adults now, and it's probably stemming from the experience they had when they were young. So the younger you are when you start drinking, the more likely you are to have a problem with drinking when you're an adult.
I can't tell you the amount of people in my experience with recovery, both those who are active in recovery
Yeah.
and those who have problems with addiction. In my reading, I'm a documentary guy, so all the documentaries I've ever watched, like The Redheaded Boy and the Partridge Family. Some of our older people watching this will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But even in my own experience with folks through New Life, those types of things, most, and I can't give you a percentage, but it's well over, a conservative guess would be well over 40% of those that I have talked to. Their problems with substances, their problems with sex addiction, their problems with substances being tobacco, alcohol,
Yeah.
vaping, drugs, whatever, hard drugs, meth, heroin, others, all find some way to stem back to addictive habits and issues from their teenage years.
Teenagers. Yep.
Whether it was they started out smoking and it quickly turned into drinking and then into something else, or whether it was that they've had a drinking problem since they were 12, or they had a porn, they were exposed to porn as a young child, and it just grew and grew and grew into full-on sex addiction, all of these things. And so don't think that it's just something small.
Yeah.
Because it may be small now, but as Paul tells us in Galatians, sin breeds sin. And he puts it this way, that if you sow the seed of the flesh, you'll reap from the flesh. If you sow the seed of the Spirit, you'll reap from the Spirit. And our children are beautiful grounds to mind a good work.
Yeah.
And the way we raise them is crucial. So have those conversations with your parents or with your children, and with your parents. Ask them what, if you don't remember what they said to you because you weren't listening, ask your parents what they said to you. But have those conversations with your children from a gospel center position. It's not a conversation of shame. It's not a trap. It's listen, I'm just, as a believer in Jesus, we know Christ transforms all of our life. And then have that conversation, and pray for them often. Pray for your children. If you're listening to this and you're a grandparent, or you're someone who is an empty nester, and you're like, my children are 21 and up, and I know all the things they do because legally they can do them, so they're not ashamed to tell me now. Then pray for them, and pray for our teenagers, and pray for Amy, right? Who
I need it.
Who needs it quite a bit. But seriously, pray for our teenagers. Technology is one of the most beautiful gifts in the world, that it can create something so holy as a catechism to help us in our faith in a matter of seconds, but also something that can expose somebody to a world of sin in a matter of seconds that used to take days, weeks, months, years to access, and things now in the world that just are unseen and unheard of. So pray for them and pray for us. We'll pray for you. Y'all have a great week. Thank you for following us on Know, Grow, Go. We'll see you next week.